All right, welcome to the sports show with Bob Spino. I'm John. This is Rob, and of course, Bob Spino.
That's me.
So today we're going to be doing the NBA. We're going to talk about all your playoff matchups. Got a couple basketball cards will be opening on the live stream here.
Yep.
So we'll see. Hopefully, I get somebody good, and we'll start it off here. We'll go through the matchups. What do you think, Bob? Celtics.
Yeah, we're gonna win it all. That's what I think. I said we because I'm a Boston fan in case nobody knows, and I grew up being a Celtic fan. I went out the other night and watched I watched the Knicks play, and I thought it was funny because the guy next to me was a Knicks fan, and he's like, "It seems like the Knicks have been cursed for years." And what he didn't know was I'm the curse. That was because they beat my Celtics when I was a kid, and I never forgave them. And I said, God, as long as I live, don't ever let this team win again. They have never won since. That is the last time they won the title. They cheated to do it. They inflated the balls, something I know you and Brady love to do, John. I know you hate Brady. It was a joke. But no, they did cheat, and Phil admitted it. He said, long before Brady did it, I did it. And I know they raised that basket in game 4 so we couldn't make a basket. And they changed it back at halftime so the Knicks could, which was totally unfair. But the Knicks have to cheat to win. We know about that. We know what they are. But I said, God, as long as I live, don't ever let them win again. They never have. Because we were the best team on earth. We had the best record that didn't win until the Golden State Warriors. We were 68-14 that year and didn't win. The only good thing was the next year we did win. We beat Jabbar and Oscar. And then 2 years later, we beat the Phoenix Suns in the championship. So that team was so great. And they did win. And weirdly enough, Boston had a Final Four best teams of all time during the year because I went out and watched every game. And that 73 team played the 86 team and lost in 6 games to them. I don't know if that ever would have really happened, but that 86 team was the best of all time. And that being said, that's history. But now the Celtics are the best team in the league, and they're going to win. They're deepest. They have no injuries, and that usually bodes well. When you don't have no injuries, it means you're probably going to win. And I see in the past, I wanted them to win. This year, I expect it. If something, if they don't win this time, I'll be really upset because they are by far and large the best. And Porzingis is the reason we have that center. We didn't have it before. We have that extra 20-point scorer. Danny Ainge never got us one. Could have had Davis, didn't do it. Could have had KD, didn't do it. LeBron got Anthony Davis instead. But, underhanded, of course, like LeBron always is. You can write that down, Rob, when we do. Bob calls LeBron underhanded. That'll get us a lot of hate mail, but it'll be fun. I can take it.
Is that what we're going to title this episode, Bob?
Yes.
Something bad about LeBron?
Title. I think it's a great title. LeBron's a crook, and I got proof. But
out of your mouth, Bob. Out of your mouth.
Out of my mouth. That's right. And I don't think LeBron's the best ever. I can name 10 other guys not named Jordan that's better than him. When you go around stacking teams, that doesn't mean anything to me. The leader stays where they are and leads the team to victory. Like Bird, like all those other guys. Bird was way better. He'd kicked his what up and down.
It's a bold statement, Bob. Have the Celtic teams not ever been stacked before?
But actually, I'm glad you brought it up because the Celtics had the worst record in their history the year Bird was drafted. And in 1 year, it was the biggest turnaround of all time. They went from 20-60 to 60-20 and got into the conference finals. And the next year, they eventually won it. So thank you, John. We've been great, but you know what? And even in the 50s, I know this. The Celtics were good. They were making playoffs before Bill Russell got there. But they needed that one player. They didn't go, run to another team. They drafted him. They traded a future Hall of Famer to get him. And it was a good move because Ed McCauley was a great player, but he wasn't as good as Bill Russell. I can tell you that. And that's all we needed. I don't believe anybody's great if you go run and stack a team. And he did backstab Kobe. He purposely did it. Because when Kobe had, he had a couple under his belt, 3, I think. And LeBron had none back then. And he had a private meeting. He goes, I'm going to go to Miami and bring all my friends there. And, we're going to have more than Kobe, or at least 1 or 2. He still don't have more than Kobe. And he's never going to get more than Kobe because the 4 he has, we're fortunate that he had. And 3 of them he should have never won. One was COVID. One was a luck out because he played like garbage down the stretch. San Antonio had him beat. Ray Allen was standing at the right place at the right time. And the other one, Dirk Nowitzki, on the foul line, Mr. 90% for his career. Sorry about your math. I didn't mean to offend the horse up there on your hat, but that's actually true. Yeah, there he is. But
with the Knicks jersey on,
huh?
With the Knicks jersey on, Mavs hat, Knicks jersey.
Well, John's a little mixed up.
This is the essence of the sports show of Bob Spino, right there.
Yes, and by the way, just to let everybody know, John has a million different hats. Like he's going to bring another one on, on every show. He's going to keep changing it up.
We'll lay it out there. I don't necessarily. There's teams and then there's players, and I root for teams and I root for individual players. Basketball just so happens to have absolutely no loyalties to each other, to the teams, to the cities that they play in, and therefore I just root for the players. And I root for Jason Kidd, hence the Mavs jersey here. I met David Lee way back when. He's a great human being, just an awesome person. I bought his jersey because of it, just because of how great he was as a person, and I've rooted for him ever since. So, little mixing and matching here, and I can still support basketball even if the Nets up and left us and departed their entire team, which is who I used to root for. But how about you, Rob?
You were not going to have anything to do with the Brooklyn shift.
It was really the breaking up of the Jason Kidd era. I mean, like Bob, with Bird turning around that team, Jason Kidd turned around a 22 win Nets team to be a 54, 55 win Nets team in the course of 1 year. I mean, Jason Kidd was that great of a player. And just his presence on a team, hence the 2011 Mavs, I mean, just his presence elevates that team. Coach on the floor, the cerebral abilities of Jason Kidd to be able to do those kinds of things. Hence why he's a coach now. And he's got his, the Mavs and I think it's the 5th seed. And, I'm rooting for them all the way. Just because of the Jason Kidd presence there. But, that's where my loyalties lied. When the Nets up and dumped Jason Kidd and then Vince Carter and then Richard Jefferson, and then they up and left the state that I lived in. And, I was a couple towns over from where they played, and that's my loyalty stayed with Jason Kidd on there.
New Jersey lost a lot of fans that were Net fans. They got really mad when the Nets went away. When they went to Brooklyn.
Why didn't they just go to the Prudential Center?
Well, they
did for a second, but
yeah, they did.
They were terrible.
They played there for a couple of years, I think, and then out they went to Brooklyn. And Jay-Z had a lot to do with that. And now he's not even, they kicked him out. I mean, he was a minority owner. He went around and bragged like he's all that. I mean, he was as talented, being an owner as he is a rapper, which is non-existent. If it wasn't for a rap, this guy would still be in the street, probably selling drugs. I mean, that's what he did as a kid. So that's what he is. And he's a loser. And hey, everything he touches, I'm sure it won't be long before Beyonce goes, because she was actually really talented, but she met him and ruined her life. And that's the truth.
Bob, that's kind of how I felt about the opening slate of playoff games in the NBA so far. Frankly, I find the NBA to be a bore fest. I'm gonna not hold back here. Just standing around the perimeter, break a 3, go down the other end, stand around the perimeter, break a 3, back down. It's just, this game is not entertaining to me, Bob. I don't know about you. There's no defense. And again, when you have the scenario like John mentioned, where everyone's a mercenary, there's no, the teams don't stick together. It's hard to really emotionally attach to this game anymore. I'm a Magic fan. I grew up a Magic fan. Once Shaq jumped, when Shaq got drafted, that was it for me. I love the jerseys. Kid me just fell in love with them. They've been a horribly run organization. I'm glad to see them back, but again, I'm basically expecting the same thing's going to happen. They're going to mess up in their decision making, and this young core of players it's going to fall apart. But I frankly wasn't impressed with the opening slate. I don't know about you guys.
Well, let's bring on somebody who was in the league when it wasn't impressive and everybody did love it. And that's my brother. He was with the Milwaukee Bucks. Tony Spino. Tony, how's it going?
Good. How's everybody doing today?
We're okay.
We're doing great, trying to muster again. I'm trying to muster enthusiasm about the NBA. I'm struggling a little bit.
The NBA. Hmm. Wow. Is that what they call it today?
Mm,
The
Allegedly.
National Botched League or what?
that
Something like that. That sounds about right.
National Brick It Up from Three Association.
Bring it up
There
in
you-
three,
there
no
you
defense,
go.
and just
break it up into boring,
casual. I don't
boring.
know what this
Right.
game is.
They draw these lines around the court, around the basket. And I mean, like, why? Because nobody goes inside and puts a layup in. They just throw it back out and look for the open three.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know?
And if your heel moves back 5 inches, you're out of bounds. Now on the
Right.
side.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody's trying to be Steph Curry, but there's only one Steph Curry.
Right. Right. And I've said this before, like the year they beat Boston a few years ago, they took the least amount of threes in the league and won it anyway. It's almost like Steph was teasing the whole league. I'm great and I'll do it. And yet I know it's not really always the right thing. So we'll just play basketball the way it's supposed to be played and beat you. And you guys just keep chucking threes and missing.
To be fair, though,
on everybody else.
To be fair, with the lack of loyalties, as I was mentioning before, though, I mean, you have to make a name for yourself in the league to make money. I mean, the NBA is where the players get paid the most money out of all the sports right now. So, Steph Curry made a name for himself, and at this point, emulating him seems to be the way to go. I mean, if you look at Caitlin Clark, I mean, she got a record shoe deal here. She's a rookie, and she has the most jersey sales, the most hype. And it's all because she is embodying the Steph Curry 3-point range for days kind of mentality. I'll step it back and then I'll step back again and I'll still make it, kind of ideology here.
Well, wait a minute. With all due respect, though, the women actually do one thing that the men don't. They actually are still fundamental. And I'm not a big, basketball fan of the WNBA at all, but there they got it right. I mean, in the past, the pro players used to play fundamental. They knew they only had to take a three when it was absolutely necessary, or they were down big and they needed quick points in a short time. But now, I mean, it's weird. It's almost like the whole NBA is a bunch of street ballers, and there's no more. The coaches don't. That coach last night with Oklahoma, I don't even know who he is. I'm just sitting there going, he's just letting them chuck, and it doesn't matter. They had more turnovers in the last couple of minutes of the game than they did points, and they still managed to hold on, and they were losing with a minute to go by 3. And I was flipping because I wanted Oklahoma. So, it was just terrible. It was terrible what was going on. And these guys don't coach. They don't coach no more. Like, they don't. When they call timeout and they pull those seats out, what the heck are they drawing? Like tic-tac-toe board? Is that what they're doing? Because, like, nobody seems to – all they do is pull up from 3. Like fast breaks. I've watched 3 of the guys just stand there and wait for the ball instead of cut to the basket. It's just pathetic. And it happens every night. I mean,
yeah, Tony. I mean, you've been wanting to bring up the importance of coaching and why it needs to be an emphasis. What's your opinions on overall coaching in the NBA right now?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of guys who, they fired. Let's go back. A couple of years ago to the Milwaukee Bucks. They were wanting to fire their coach every year. Okay. Then they went off and they won the whole thing in the first time in 50 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then a year later, they decided to pull the plug and fire the coach. And then they hired some other coach who couldn't coach and they fired him. And now they brought in Doc Rivers, who's a very below average coach. I'm not saying he's not a good guy, but he's not a good coach in my mind. And, he's failed. When the team gets down the stretch, he's failed every team he's been with. How he ever won with the Celtics is because he had the big 3. He had 3 great players, and even some of those guys have commented after he was gone that he wasn't a very good coach. Okay, so I don't know anymore. I just think if you've got the best 3 or 4 players, you're going to win in spite of the coaches. I think there's 1 or 2 coaches that are really good out there, but I don't know if they have the players to coach them to win it all. It's really sad. It's almost like who likes who and who, who's friends with the best player on the team, and then the best player gets the guy the job. It's out of control. I mean, you don't even see general managers. I don't even know how much power they have. They're trying to hold on to their jobs. So, they're going along giving the players what they want. I mean, it's a pretty much player league now. Way back in the day, it was the coaches, the general managers' decisions. Now it's really the players are running, and they're ruling the roost and calling them. They're making all the decisions, so.
Also, the Knicks coach now, Thibodeau, he was actually the defensive coordinator for that '08 Celtic team. They say he was the real coach, and he was really, calling the X's and O's and doing everything. And the way the Celtics played D is a big reason why they won.
And now the Celtics team with the big three, they only won one title, right?
Yes,
Correct.
that is right.
Yeah, and honestly, they probably should have won more than just the one.
Well, the 1 year, for the first time in his life, Garnett blew his knee out, and that was the end of that year. And then the second time, the referees gave it to the Lakers. I mean, we were up by 15 points in the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden, with less than 9 minutes, there was 9 minutes to go in the fourth, and we were over the foul limit, and they just blew the whistle for the next 9 minutes. And the Lakers caught us on the foul line and then beat us at the end of the game. They gave them that game. It was in LA. It was Game 7, and they gave it to them. There's no doubt in my mind. We got cheated in that series. I'm calling everybody out tonight. I'm calling the refs out too, because that's true. They did it.
Well,
Keep calling it out. I got more to say. I got things to say about the defending champion, but I'll let someone else chime in.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I think the best coach in the NBA is the guy with the Miami Heat. He's a terrific.
He really is better than I ever thought.
He's the best coach in the NBA, and the little that I watch it now, and the things that I read and the things that I hear and what he does with what he has, he's the best coach in the NBA by far. Or Pat Riley would have let him go a long time ago.
That's for sure.
Well, that's interesting because he had the big three. Ultimately, everybody thought that was the greatest big three with the Bosh, Wade, and LeBron James, to start off his career. And he came up short a couple times. So, the fact that Pat Riley stuck with him and the fact that after that big three, he still found success says a lot for his resume, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not so sure when he didn't win, he had Shaq. LeBron. But when LeBron went there is when they won it. Because LeBron, wherever he's been, he can't win it without a great supporting cast. Okay. LeBron can't win you a championship by himself. There's been other great players that could, but LeBron cannot.
And that was my argument before you got on.
I mean, that's why he continues to, pick the players he wants to play with on the Lakers and tries to recruit the best free agents every year to join him because he knows he can't win without them, So.
Well, I was picking on LeBron before. I don't know if you heard it yet because you were just getting on.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear it.
Okay, yeah, I was basically saying that I don't believe in a guy that stacks a team and then tells you how great he is. If you're there already, you lead the team you got, and you're patient. You wait to get players around you, and then you're the main player, and you get everybody else involved, and that's what makes you great, and that's what makes you win. You're selfless, and LeBron is selfish, and I just think he goes and stacks and brags. And another thing which I didn't say, he's dominating an NBA that is a joke. It's like a king dominating a weak, country going, I'm the king, I'm the best. No, you're not. The league's a joke. It's nothing compared to what it was. Those old players would have killed these guys. And, okay, yeah, I'm the king of kindergarten. Congratulations, LeBron, you made it. Great job, buddy.
When did that switch happen in you guys' all opinion? When did the league? Because I mean, it's kind of a consensus across fandom as it is that the NBA now is not what it used to be by any stretch of the imagination. But what years did that really take that turn? Where did it go wrong?
That's a great question, John, actually. I've seen it slowly back down at a time when everybody still thinks it was great, and that was in the 90s. After Magic and Bird did their thing and Jordan took the spotlight, he was great and they were great, but the league around him was getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And it just, I think that's where it started. And now after that, it just hit the skids. It totally hit the skids.
Well,
Um, But that's
you know,
what I've seen it
the one
slowly
thing that
happen.
I'll say about Michael Jordan is, he won 6 championships
Right.
and he stayed with the Chicago Bulls the whole time. And he didn't have the greatest group of guys around him. He stuck it out and he never, free agent, never went to another team to say, well, I can't win with these guys. I'm going to win with these guys. And I think once he stepped away from the game slowly declined year by year, little by little. I mean, there's guys sitting on the bench on a 1-year contract in the NBA making $40 million for 1 year. I mean, guy doesn't even practice, was it Iverson goes, practice?
Yeah.
This guy never got off the bench. They paid him $40 million for 1 year. I mean, I think the salaries are, the more you expand, the more watered down everything comes. And not only that, but I don't know if you're aware, but this year at the opening day of the rosters, there was 125 foreign athletes on the rosters this year.
Right.
So what does that say? That means there's 125 American players not making the rosters in the NBA.
And
I don't have anything against the foreign players. If they're great, they're great. Hey, that's great. Good opportunity for them. I know Europe's gotten, but you know what it is about those players? They're more fundamentally sound. They're better coached.
That's it.
They're better coached and more financially sound than the kids coming one and dones out of college. These kids aren't even ready for the NBA. They should all have a rule where if they're going to leave, they go to the D League to develop. Right. I don't see any Kareem Abdul-Jabbars out there coming out in the first round. I don't see, did Michael Jordan come out? Yeah. But did he have to slowly develop? He did. There aren't many Magic Johnsons, who I think was the greatest guards of all time.
I
don't see any Magic Johnsons coming out.
I think part of this starts with this AAU ball, Tony. I think they're not learning the fundamentals of the game. It's kind of junkyard ball. And by the time to get to college, you're seeing it play out in college now. The same lack of fundamentals. And you're looking at an unrefined product by the time they get to the NBA.
You know what,
Rob? They're behind developmentally their European counterparts.
You know what, Rob? You're absolutely right. I talked to a lot of coaches who they coach these kids in their AAU and all these summer league teams, and they travel around, and all the parents are with them, and all these coaches are telling these kids how great they are, and they don't even know how to make an assist. They don't even know what an assist is. All they're doing is running down there shooting, and they're telling these parents how much money their kids should get and how great they are, and they're not. I'm going to tell you right now, I've said this for years. The majority of the players who go to UCLA, because they committed to UCLA, are already 50 times better than they can live up to being. And a lot of kids fail because they can't meet those expectations. And you are so right on. I couldn't agree with you more. There is no coaching even in high school level, even below that. I mean, everybody wants to be a coach, but there's so much more to coaching than just coaching the game. Okay. And it's unbelievable what I see today. The lack of fundamentals is out the door.
Yeah, that's it. And I think just that tells you right there that the players in this country aren't nearly as good as they were.
Yeah, the teams that played meatball in the NCAA tournament didn't go far. It was the teams that played like cohesive units.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, like Connecticut, for instance.
Well, and that's why I picked Connecticut, because one, they had the talent, and two, they were greatly coached. And I'm big on coaches. I picked Connecticut to win the second year in a row. And I'm telling you, people are already counting them out next year or counting them in. This guy's going to coach it, and he's going to coach it. Listen, I mean, the NCAA lost a great coach in the guy from Villanova, Jay Wright. This guy was one of the best coaches out there. Bill Self at Kansas is one of the best. Why those teams are always right there every year? Because of their great coaches that they have. You know, all these other guys who roll out the ball and say they can coach, they can't coach, and they can't even evaluate talent, what they've got, you know.
Unless the clock is running out and at the buzzer, there should never be a play where you're launching from the logo. I don't care if you make them once in a while. It just shouldn't happen. So fundamentally, yeah, definitely unsound. But going back to your question, John, about when did the NBA die in our minds? Again, this is a very subjective thing. It's all perception. Everyone's going to be different. For instance, I thought the 90s were the best, but again, that's perception.
Yeah.
For me personally, we remember when everyone talked about the world ending in 2012 and the Mayan calendar and all that. For me, the NBA died around then. The rise of Curry and the endless three-pointers. That's it.
I think
For
that
me,
was the
then
final
the
blow.
NBA was over.
I think that was the final blow, Rob. And you know what? What I said about the 90s, it definitely, think about this. Jordan for 7 years, as great as he was, leading the league in scoring every year and dunking on everybody, he was drafted in the 80s, and so was Ewing, and they couldn't win at all. It was a Boston Laker world, and you really couldn't. I mean, Jordan actually never beat Bird.
With a dash of Detroit at the end, right, Bob?
Well, I have to throw in Detroit, I guess, just because. But yes, at the very end, I have to stick them in there somewhere. But yes, but from the 90s on, and I said it was very slight and very small. But I noticed that the play had started declining then. Now, that being said, there were still great teams. Jordan came into his own. And I'll tell you, this really happened. I went to see the Nets one night, and Jack Haley brought me inside the locker room. And he sat with me, and he goes, you know what? Dennis Hobson was a player from Ohio State. He was the number 1 pick in the draft. And, he introduced me. He goes, Dennis, this is Bob. I go, nice to meet you, Dennis. And Jack looked at him and goes, man, you got to start playing better so we can win some games. And he went, screw that. I'm not making enough money. He ended up getting traded to the Chicago Bulls the next year. And Jordan, after 1 year, couldn't stand him, went to the owner and said, either he goes or I go. Jordan didn't tolerate losing. He was a leader and a winner. And the NBA was much better in the 90s, but it was starting to decline then slowly. You'd have to it was very slow, but you had to look at it really hard to notice it. I noticed it because I know how great the 80s were.
Well, go ahead.
And, those guys, there was nothing like that, those teams. I mean, and just for anybody that plays NBA 2K, the video game, you can play any era, including like when you were in the league, you can play with the Milwaukee Bucks in the 70s. And so I said to my friend one day, I go, you really want to keep winning against your friends? Just play the 86 Celtics. And now he plays them every time. He has never lost a game since that time from any era. So, I mean, that era was the best in my mind. I also think the 70s gets thrown under the bus. I think it was good. I know people don't think it was good, but I know it was good. My brother was in the league. I know it was good. So, I don't like it when people go, the players that came before were not that good. Well, why? Because you're not 20 or they're not 21 and you are? I mean, no, they were great and they deserve that respect. I really believe that.
Well,
what about you, John? Do you have a death of the NBA era, or is the NBA still?
Yeah, you asked the question. John.
I mean, I personally think it was probably right around that time. I mean, you see, so I really was watching the most in the early 2000s, and the NBA was still really competitive at that time. You had your great teams. I mean, now you kind of see teams and they flip flop. Like they're good for a couple years and then they're bad for a couple years. In that time period, the 90s, the early 2000s, when a team was good, it held on to their players and it stayed good. You look at the Spurs. They held on to their coach. They held on to their team. and their core players, and they stayed good for a long time. You look at the Nets. They didn't fall off until they got rid of, like I said, Jason Kidd, Vince Carter, Richard Jefferson, and just fell apart. The Lakers, they stayed good. They held on to Kobe, and they kept getting pieces around him. You know what I mean? I think probably around that time of the 2012, 2011 even, but 2011 the Mavs won, and they weren't your prototypical 3-point only shooting team. They had a really good mix and they played hard defense. That was their game, and you'll never see a team win like that again. That's the huge difference. So, right around that time though, teams were starting to become those, 3-point no defense style teams trying to win it. And probably a lot of it has to do with the Curry era and the 3-point shot. And, Bob will love this. Those guys in the analytics booth saying, oh, yeah, the 3-point shot's worth more because, it's worth more points, even if you don't make as many of them. I think that getting into the coach's mind and into the players' minds, really started to change the game big time, and changed it from you don't need defense if you make more threes. So that's right about that time, that early 2010s.
But the problem is the threes don't go in more times than that. That's the problem.
That's why I said. I mean, I was, I don't know how many possessions with the Bucks game. Stand around the perimeter, brick three, down the other way, stand around, brick three, and then you got a couple possessions till someone score because they're just literally walking down and launching the three early in the shot clock. That's not, from a fan's perspective, that's not entertaining. I mean, I never saw basketball as a 3-point shooting contest, but here we are.
It's not. A college does it too, Rob. I mean, they do.
Oh, sure. Oh, they all think they're Curry. They're all going to make every three.
Right.
They're not the teams that win though. In the championship. I mean, the last 2 years, Connecticut was not, as the resident UConn fan here, been rooting for them since 2000 here, that's my team. And
resident UConn fan, John?
He was going to
everyone say goodbye to John, boys and girls. It was nice having him on the show for the time we did.